Hello all you adorable fluff butts out there. Kitthesoulless here, and today we're going to talk about something a little closer to home. And since I know there are people that are going to be pissed off at me for talking about things like this, I feel the need to remind people that everything I say in this particular series, these are my own personal opinions. Which means if you don't agree with what I say, good on you, but at the same time, don't come harassing me because you don't agree with the things I say. But with that out of the way, it's time that this old Greymuzzle starts talking about self-harm. And yes, I know there is a massive red flag about somebody like me wanting to talk about this particular subject, but it's still a problem that I see in our community, and recently I've recognized that even I have an issue with it occasionally. And I know there are going to be people out there that go, "But Kit, wait, you don't have any scars, you haven't cut yourself, you don't beat yourself, so why are you talking about this particular topic?" And this is where I have to point out that those aren't the only forms of self-harm. They're just the most obvious ones. And it is specifically because we can recognize it so easily that these are the forms of self-harm that get talked about so much. But there are other forms of it that don't leave such obvious scars. And though I'm ashamed to admit it, the reason I know of these is because these are things I've done to myself in the past, and occasionally, I hate to say it, but I still do. And personally, my poison of choice is what's referred to as emotional self-harm. And I know, that probably doesn't seem like as much of a big deal as somebody cutting into themselves or scratching away their skin or slamming their head into a wall. And that's part of the reason why I'm talking today. A lot of people forget that your mental health is just as important as your physical well-being, and most people don't realize that it's just as easy to damage it. And in all honesty, it's to some degree easier, because it doesn't require a razor blade or a wall. All it requires is a thought. A simple negative thought. And for those of you who have been around the channel long enough, you know mine.
You're a monster.
It started off as just an intrusive thought. Something that would creep in when I was feeling upset with myself. But the more often that thought occurs, the harder it becomes to shake, and eventually you start to convince yourself of it. After all, it would explain so much, right? I mean, there are a lot of people that dislike me, so it becomes fairly easy to just say they hate me because I'm a monster. I deserve this. It becomes like a mantra that you use to explain everything that goes wrong in your life. And the more you think it or the more you hear it, the more damage it does. Now, it may not be the same for everyone, but I have seen this particular type of emotional self-harm a lot in our community. I've seen people using this form of self-harm as a joke. Make a mistake? Well, it's fine, I'm just a failure anyways. Somebody ignores you? Oh well, it's fine, I'm not important enough to have an opinion here, I'm just gonna shut up. And I've seen it get more serious too. I've seen people use this particular form of self-harm as a way to cope with abuse. They'll accept when somebody close to them is being abusive because, oh, it's not their fault, it's mine, I'm just stupid. But all this really does is empowers the abuser to continue what they're doing, and occasionally they'll even reinforce your own negative thoughts against you. This is actually one I've had done to me, and trust me, it makes it all the worse to have somebody else acknowledge the negative thought that you have about yourself and use it against you. And the worse it gets, the worse you feel about yourself. You start to catastrophize your situation. If somebody doesn't like you, well, of course, they hate your guts, they want to kill you. Or doing things like disqualifying the positive. Things like going, oh, it doesn't matter if I had a good time, I don't matter. I know for me personally that the should statements can get pretty bad too. Things like, you should just shut up, no one cares about your opinion. Or, you should be more like this person, they're not as terrible as you. Or my personal favorite, You should just leave. No one wants you here. I know that last one tends to fuck up my day pretty easily. But the silver lining to all of this is that, just like every other form of self-harm, there is a way to break this particular habit too. And the good news is, it's easier than you would think. But the problem is, you can't do it alone. And that right there is the thing that makes most people not want to try. Because at the end of the day, people who struggle with this sort of thing often feel like they're alone. And that feeling can make the first step of recovery seem impossible. Because the first step is realizing that you're not alone. There will always be people in the world who will stand by you no matter what. People who want to see you live your best life and be the best version of yourself. And it can be hard to identify these people in your life, but understand, they're going to be the ones sitting there encouraging your accomplishments instead of dwelling on your faults. They're the friends that will stay by you, no matter how dark your day gets. And they're the people that make things like practicing self-compassion so much easier. Because what would you do if your friend was in the same situation as you? What if they messed up? Would you berate and attack them? Would you tell them that they're useless or that they don't belong? Probably not. So why should you feel that way about yourself when you wouldn't about them? And eventually, through the friends who are willing to stand by you, it'll become easier to recognize when you're feeling something like this. It'll allow you to experience it in a more productive way and discover where these feelings about yourself come from. And eventually, you'll get to a point where you can recognize that just because other people think negatively about you doesn't mean you have to think that way about yourself. After all, I'm not the monster that people claim I am. I'm just not perfect. But that's gonna be it for this one, so until next time, all you adorable fluff butts, bye-bye.